the McDonnell Douglas KC-10 extender as an aerial refueling tanker aircraft, the military version of the three-engine DC-10 airliner operated by the United States Air Force. The KC-10 was developed from the Advanced Tanker Cargo Aircraft Program. It incorporates military-specific equipment for its primary roles of transport and aerial refueling. It was developed to supplement the KC-135 Stratotanker following experiences in Southeast Asia and the Middle East. The KC-10 was the second McDonnell Douglas transport aircraft to be selected by the Air Force following the C-9. A total of 60 KC-10s were produced for the USAF. The Royal Netherlands Air Force operates two similar tankers designated KC-10 that were converted from DC-10s. The KC-10 plays a key role in the mobilization of U.S. military assets, taking part in overseas operations far from home. These aircraft performed airlift and aerial refueling during the 1986 bombing of Libya, the 1990 91 Gulf War with Iraq, the 1999 NATO bombing of Yugoslavia, war in Afghanistan, and Iraq War. The KC-10 is expected to serve until 2043. Design and development Advanced Tanker Cargo Aircraft Program During the Vietnam War, doubts began to be raised regarding the Boeing KC-135 Stratotanker fleet's ability to meet the needs of the United States' global commitments. The aerial refueling fleet was deployed to Southeast Asia to support tactical aircraft and strategic bombers, while maintaining the U.S.-based support of the nuclear bomber fleet. Consequently, the Air Force sought an aerial tanker with greater capabilities than the KC-135. In 1972, two DC-10s were flown in trials at Edwards Air Force Base, simulating air refuelings to check for possible wake issues. Boeing performed similar tests with the 747. During the 1973 Yom Kippur War, the Air Force commenced Operation Nickel Grass to supply Israel with weapons and supplies. The operation demonstrated the necessity for adequate air refueling capabilities. Denied landing rights in Europe, C-5 Galaxy transports were forced to carry a fraction of their maximum payload on direct flights from the continental United States to Israel. To address this shortfall in mobility, in 1975, under the Advanced Tanker Cargo Aircraft Program, 4 aircraft were evaluated: the Lockheed C-5, the Boeing 747, the McDonnell Douglas DC-10, and the Lockheed L-1011. The only serious contenders were Boeing and McDonnell Douglas. On December 19, 1977, McDonnell Douglas's DC-10 was chosen. The primary reason of this choice was the KC-10's ability to operate from shorter runways. Initially, a batch of 12 aircraft was ordered, but this was later increased to 60. KC-10 extender The KC-10 extender first flew on July 12, 1980, but it was not until October the same year that the first aerial refuel sortie was performed. The design for the KC-10 involved modifications from the DC-10-30CF design. Unnecessary airline features were replaced by an improved cargo handling system and military avionics. Meanwhile, the KC-10 retains 88% commonality with its commercial counterparts, giving it greater access to the worldwide commercial support system. Other changes from the DC-10-30CF include the removal of most windows and lower cargo doors. Early aircraft featured a distinctive light gray, white and blue paint scheme, but a gray-green camouflage scheme was used on later tankers. The paint scheme was switched to a medium gray color by the late 1990s. The most notable changes were the addition of the McDonnell Douglas Advanced Aerial Refueling Boom and additional fuel tanks located in the baggage compartments below the main deck. The extra tanks increased the KC-10's fuel capacity to 356,000 pounds, nearly doubling the KC-135's capacity. The KC-10 has both a centerline refueling boom unique in that it sports a control surface system at its aft end that differs from the V-tail design used on previous tankers and a drogue and hose system on the starboard side of the rear fuselage. The KC-10 boom operator is located in the rear of the aircraft with wide window for monitoring refueling. the operator controls refueling operations through a digital fly-by-wire system. Unlike the KC-135, the KC-10's hose and drogue system allows refueling of Navy, Marine Corps, and most Allied aircraft, all in one mission. The final 20 KC-10s produced included wing-mounted pods for added refueling locations. In addition to its tanking role, the KC-10 can carry a complement 75 personnel with 146,000 pounds of cargo, or 170,000 pounds in an all-cargo configuration. The KC-10 has a side cargo door for loading and unloading cargo. Handling equipment is required to raise and lower loads to the cargo opening. Further developments a need for new transport aircraft for the Royal Netherlands Air Force was first identified in 1984. The 1991 Gulf War highlighted the deficiencies in mobility of European forces. In 1991 4 categories of transport requirements were established. Category A required a large cargo aircraft with a range of at least 4,500 kilometers and the capability to refuel F-16s. In 1992, 2 DC-10-30CFs were acquired from Martinger in a buy-leaseback contract. When one of the two aircraft was lost in the Martinger Flight 495 crash, a third aircraft was bought from Martinger. The conversion was handled via the United States Foreign Military Sales Program, which in turn contracted McDonnell Douglas. Costs for the conversion were initially estimated at $89.5 million. The aircraft was to be equipped with both a boom and a probe and drogue system. However, because McDonnell Douglas did not have any experience with the requested remote aerial refueling operator system, and because the third aircraft differed from the original two, the program could not be completed at budget. By omitting the probe and drogue system and a fixed partition wall between the cargo and passenger, the cost could be limited at $96 million. To make up for the cost increase, McDonnell Douglas hired Dutch companies to do part of the work. The actual converting of the aircraft, for instance, was done by KLM. Conversion of the aircraft was done from October 1994 to September 1995 for the first aircraft and from February to December 1995 for the second. This was much longer than planned, mostly because McDonnell Douglas delivered the parts late. This would have again increased the cost, but in the contract for the AH-64 Apaches, which the Royal Netherlands Air Force also bought from McDonnell Douglas, the price was agreed to be kept at $96 million. To modernize the platform, the USAF has awarded a contract to Boeing in 2010 to upgrade the fleet of 59 aircraft with new communication, navigation, surveillance and air traffic management system. This is to allow the aircraft to fly in civil airspace as new ICAO and FAA standards take effect in 2015. Rockwell Collins has also been awarded a contract in 2011 for avionics and systems integration for the cockpit modernization program. Operational history United States The first KC-10s was delivered to the Air Force's Strategic Air Command in March 1981 at Barksdale AFB. The 60th and final KC-10 arrived on November 29, 1988. The KC-10s served with SAC until 1992, when they were reassigned to the newly established Air Mobility Command. In the aerial refueling role, the KC-10s have been operated largely in the strategic refueling of large number of tactical aircraft on ferry flights and the refueling of other strategic transport aircraft. Conversely, the KC-135 fleet has operated largely in the in-theater tactical role. There are 59 KC-10 extenders in service with the USAF as of 2010. The USAF's KC-10s are stationed primarily at Travis AFB, California, and McGuire AFB, New Jersey. When faced with refusals of basing and overflight rights from continental European countries during Operation El Dorado Canyon, the US was forced to use the UK-based F-111s in the 1986 airstrikes against Libya. The KC-10s and KC-135s allowed 29 F-111s, along with other Air Force and Navy aircraft, to reach their targets. The KC-10 again played a key role during Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm in 1991. KC-10s facilitated the deployment of tactical, strategic, and transport aircraft to Saudi Arabia. In the early stages of Operation Desert Shield, aerial refueling was key to the rapid airlift of materiel and forces. In addition to refueling airlift aircraft, the KC-10, along with the smaller KC-135, moved thousands of tons of cargo and thousands of troops in support of a massive buildup. The KC-10 and the KC-135 conducted about 51,700 separate refueling operations and delivered 125 million gallons of fuel without missing a single scheduled rendezvous. Since then, the KC-10 had participated in other smaller conflicts. In March 1999, NATO launched Operation Allied Force against the government of Yugoslavia. The mobility portion of the operation began in February and was heavily dependent on tankers. By early May 1999, some 150 KC-10s and KC-135s deployed to Europe where they refueled bombers, fighters and support aircraft engaged in the conflict. The KC-10 flew 409 missions throughout the entire Allied force campaign and continued support operations in Kosovo. Since September 11, 2001, KC-10s had also flown more than 350 missions guarding U.S. skies as a part of Operation Noble Eagle. During Operations Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom, KC-10s have flown more than 1,390 missions delivering critical air refueling support to numerous joint and coalition receiver aircraft. KC-10s are expected to serve until 2043. The Air Force is considering retiring its fleet of KC-10 tankers in response to sequestration budget cuts. The option was being considered as part of the service's FY 2015 budget. The Air Force requires 479 tanker aircraft, with most of the refueling fleet made up of 1950s-era KC-135s, while there are only several dozen KC-10s. One of the service's top priorities is the KC-46 tanker to replace one-third of its Cold War-era KC-135 fleet. Having 3 tanker models in service is costly and prevents acquisition of the new fleet. Because a horizontal cut across the refueling fleets would achieve small efficiencies across a large force, a vertical chop is being considered to divest all KC-10s to achieve greater savings over a shorter timeline. Some believe retiring the KC-10 would not benefit the Air Force, given that it is equipped with both boom and hose and drogue refueling systems, the fleet's relatively young age, and its importance for movement across the Pacific. At first, officials claimed that the initial focus on retiring the KC-10 in September 2013 was a trial balloon to call attention to Air Force operating cost issues. As of early 2013, the KC-10 had a per-hour flying cost of $21,170 and a mission-capable rate of 87%. An FY 2015 budget plan does not include cuts to the KC-10. But the fleet is in danger of being retired during FY 2016 if sequestration is not repealed. In the House Armed Services Committee's markup of the FY 2015 budget, language was included prohibiting the use of funds to begin retirement of the KC-10 fleet, even though the aircraft is not at risk for retirement until the next year, which is interpreted as a sign that the House will oppose KC-10 retirement when the issue comes up. Netherlands equals. The 2 Dutch KDC-10s are used for both refueling and transport. They are stationed on Eindhoven Airport as part of the 334th Transport Squadron. Of the 5,500 hours flown in the first 3 years of use, the aircraft were used in their tanker role for 50% of the time. Besides being used by the Air Force and NATO allies, the KDC-10s are also used to support peacekeeping and humanitarian aid operations. Of the first 3 years, 32% of the flight hours were used for peacekeeping and humanitarian aid. In this function, the aircraft have been deployed to Kosovo to evacuate refugees, to the Caribbean and Central America to provide humanitarian aid after the hurricanes Louis, Georges and Mitch, and to various countries in Africa and Asia to provide development aid. In 1998, the aircraft were also used to evacuate Dutch citizens from Indonesia during the fall of Suharto. Dutch KDC-10s have been operating out of Marnes AFB in support of Allied forces during Operation Enduring Freedom. equals civilian operators equals commercial refueling companies Omega Aerial Refueling Services and Global Air Tanker Service operate 2 KDC-10 tankers for lease. They were converted from DC-10 to 40 and provide probe and drogue refueling capabilities from wing pods similar to the KC-10. In June and July 2011, Omega's KDC-10 supported 3 of Royal Australian Air Force's FA-18 Hornets, en route to Red Flag Alaska. Operators: United States Air Force a 59 KC-10 aircraft in use as of September 2012. Strategic Air Command, 2D Bombwing a Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana, 1981 a 92. 2D Air Refueling Squadron 1989 a 92, 32D Air Refueling Squadron 1981 a 92. 4th Wing a Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, North Carolina, 1991 a 92. 344th Air Refueling Squadron, 911th Air Refueling Squadron. 22D Air Refueling Wing a March Air Force Base, California, 1982 a 92. 6th Air Refueling Squadron 1989 a 92, 9th Air Refueling Squadron 1982 a 92. 68th Air Refueling Group Air Refueling Wing a Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, North Carolina, 1982 a 91. 344th Air Refueling Squadron 1986 a 91, 911th Air Refueling Squadron 1982 a 91. 802d Air Refueling Wing, Provisional a Lagos Air Base, Portugal 1990 a 91. 802d Air Refueling Squadron. 1701st Air Refueling Wing, Provisional a King Abdulaziz Air Base, Saudi Arabia 1990 a 91. 1710th Air Refueling Squadron. Air Mobility Command, 22d Air Refueling Wing a March Air Force Base, California, 1992 a 94. 6th Air Refueling Squadron, 9th Air Refueling Squadron. 4th Operations Group a Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, North Carolina, 1992 a 94, 344th Air Refueling Squadron, 911th Air Refueling Squadron. 458th Operations Group a Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana, 1992 a 94, 2D Air Refueling Squadron, 32D Air Refueling Squadron. 60th Air Mobility Wing a Travis AFB, California, 1994 a 6th Air Refueling Squadron 1995 a 9th Air Refueling Squadron 1994 a 305th Air Mobility Wing a McGuire AFB, New Jersey, 1994 a 2D Air Refueling Squadron, 32D Air Refueling Squadron. 380th Air Expeditionary Wing a Al Dhafra Air Base, United Arab Emirates 1993 a 908th Expeditionary Air Refueling Squadron. 722d Air Refueling Wing a March Air Force Base, California, 1994 a 95. 706th Air Refueling Squadron 1994 a 95, 709th Air Refueling Squadron 1994-95. Air Force Reserve Command, 98th Air Refueling Group, Associate, a Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana, 1987 a 94. 78th Air Refueling Squadron. 349th Air Mobility Wing, Associate, a Travis AFB, California, 1994 a 70th Air Refueling Squadron 1994 a 79th Air Refueling Squadron 1995 a 413th Flight Test Group a Robbins AFB, Georgia, 2003 a 370th Flight Test Squadron. 452d Air Refueling Wing Air Mobility Wing a March Air Force Base, California, 1981 a 95. 78th Air Refueling Squadron 1981 a 87, 79th Air Refueling Squadron 1982 a 95. 514th Air Mobility Wing, Associate, a McGuire AFB, New Jersey, 1994 Euro. 76th Air Refueling Squadron, 78th Air Refueling Squadron. 916th Air Refueling Group, Associate, a Euro Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, North Carolina, 1985 a Euro 94. 77th Air Refueling Squadron. Netherlands, Royal Netherlands Air Force operates 2 KDC-10s, 334th Squadron a Euro Eindhoven Airport. Incidents: on September 17, 1987, KC-10A serial number 82-0190 was undergoing maintenance on the ground at Barksdale AFB, Louisiana and suffered an explosion and subsequent fire. The KC-10 was significantly damaged and written off. One member of the ground crew, Sergeant Joseph M. Bergio, died in the fire. Specifications, data from USAF fact sheet, Stephen, General Characteristics, Crew, 4. Additional crew members such as an aeromedical evacuation team and cargo handlers may be added. Length, 181 feet 7 inches, wingspan, 165 feet 4.5 in, height, 58 feet 1 in, wing area, 3,958 FTA squared, empty weight, 241,027 pounds, loaded weight, 593,000 pounds, max takeoff weight, 590,000 pounds, power plant, 3 F103/General Electric CF6-50C2 turbofans, 52,500 pound forces each, maximum. Fuel capacity, 356,000 pounds, performance, maximum speed, 538 knots/0.89 Mach, range, 4,400 miles, ferry range, 11,500 miles, service ceiling, 42,000 feet, rate of climb, 6,870 feet per minute. See also: related development, McDonnell Douglas DC-10, aircraft of comparable role, configuration and era, Lockheed TRI-Star, Ilyushin Il-78, related lists, list of active United States military aircraft, list of United States military aerial refueling aircraft. References, notes. Citations. Bibliography. External links, KC-10 page on Boeing.com, USAF KC-10 fact sheet, KC-10 website, KC-10 fact sheet on aviationzone.com, KDC-10 in the Dutch Air Force, KC-10 CLS competition, McDonnell Douglas promotional video of the KC-10 extender on YouTube.